Welcome everyone to the Facilitators of Change e-forum. It's great to have you on board. Great to have you here this morning and great to have you for the Communities of Practice session with Lab and Mary Wilson. Welcome aboard. I am Denise Busell. I'm with Red Meat Profit Partnership and Beef and Lamb New Zealand. I'm based here in Christchurch. It's been a bit foggy this morning, but the sun's burning off the fog, so that's good. And I have a co-facilitator with me, Jeanette. So Jeanette, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi everybody. Great to see you all this morning. And I'm from South Australia, and I've been working with RMPP, with Lab on the lead facilitator training and a few other bits and pieces, but really loving doing this e-forum. It's been fantastic. Thanks, Denise.
Cool. No, it's great to have you as part of this, Jeanette. And Lab and Mary, can you say hello and just briefly introduce yourselves, because it's great to have you running this this community of practice session.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm half of Bats Inc. Limited.
And I'm Lab, and I think most of you have met me before. I have met, I think, everybody in the... I just had a quick look around the screen to see who was there, and I think we've met everybody. But so yeah, this is a new venture, this Zooming for us, and we're really enjoying the interaction with everybody. So look forward to the rest of the morning.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, a quick poll to get us started, just so that you're getting familiar with Zoom. I've just launched a poll for you. We just want to find out where you're from. So click and let's see where people are joining us from. Give you a couple more seconds to click the button. Sorry for the Australians who are others, rather than being able to put in where you're actually from. All right, and sharing the results. Hopefully you can see that. A few of us here in Canterbury, a few though in the Waikato and Bay of Plenty and Manawatu, Wanganui, Taranaki, Wellington. So, oh, yep. Go Sandra, Aussies in New Zealand. Yep, there are a few of us, so it's great. The next quick poll I'm going to launch is just to give us some idea of your facilitation experience. So if you can jump on there and tell us how experienced you are. You can see you're answering. A couple more seconds just to tell us how experienced you are with facilitating. John's starting the rugby conversation. Dangerous. Alrighty. Okay, I'm going to finish the polling there and share the results. So yeah, we've got some fairly experienced facilitators on the call this morning, which is great. I think that probably reflects the interest in communities of practice, Lab and Mary, so it's really cool. Cool. Alrighty. So Jeanette, just a few bits on Zoom etiquette and what we're doing today.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I think you've all probably mastered Zoom fairly well, but just a reminder to keep yourselves on mute when we are running the sessions. Of course, in the breakout rooms, when we send you off, we need you to unmute yourselves and get engaged in those conversations. If you want to change from speaker view to gallery view, it's in the top right-hand corner of your screen. So it's really great to have it on gallery view with videos on, so that we can see all of the people online this morning, all your happy faces. We have Tech Ben and Tech Dusty who are with us today, who will help you with any of your technical issues. So you can message them, private message them in the chat. So if you start typing in tech, that'll pop them up and they can give you a hand. I think that's probably the main things we need to remember today. So what are we going to do this morning? We're going to hand over to Lab and Mary shortly, and explore some of the concepts of the community of practice in the video. So I hope you all had a chance to watch the great little video which gave a good overview to get the thinking happening. We'll identify the role of a facilitator in a community of practice and explore some key strategies to develop and sustain a successful community of practice. And then we'll finish off with a small taste of what a community of practice can offer. So I'm really excited to hear about this morning, and from Lab and Mary, and all the experience and research that they've been doing into communities of practice. Thank you, Denise.
Cool, thanks Jeanette. Well, I think without further ado, we are handing over to you, Lab and Mary. So take us away. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you and welcome everybody. It's great to be here in the sunny, foggy Waikato, our backdrop. Actually, we're in Auckland, but I have to admit, some of you will remember, hopefully most of you are old enough to remember, back to 2003, we had an epidemic called SARS. And what most people probably don't realise, that there was a remarkable contribution was made by a community of practice that was developed right at that time. So in early February of 2003, reports started coming in, and by the beginning of March, the World Health Organization had actually declared that there was a new disease afoot called SARS, or severe acute respiratory syndrome. They didn't know what was causing it. All of the blood tests, all the tests that had been done to that point were negative for flu viruses. And so on March 17, and that's the important date, the WHO convened or requested 11 different laboratories from all around the world, from China, Hong Kong, Britain and Europe, and North America, Canada and the US, to collaborate and to try and find the cause of this new disease. So the hunt was on, and so these labs agreed to work together. They traded samples so that each lab was working on the same sample at the same time, and they held daily. They could share each other's work and critique it and comment and argue about the results and debate them. And so they were all working on the same viruses, or the same samples that were sent in from patients at the same time. And they held daily teleconference meetings, pre-Zoom, pre-Skype, pre-everything. But they held daily teleconference meetings where they compared the results and they debated their meaning, and they suggested avenues for further investigation. And normally you would expect the lab, by working by itself, to take several months or even years to be able to detect the causative organism of a disease like this. But by April 16th, should I say, just one day, under a month after they launched the investigation, the World Health Organization were confident to announce that it was a coronavirus that was the cause of SARS. And so it was hailed as a remarkable global feat of collaboration.
It's interesting. The comment was made in the video about this is often not someone's real work, their everyday work. It's an add-on. But in this instance, that they absolutely got engaged in that. And most communities of practice don't work at that speed. They're not new. They've been around since our ancestors sat around the fire, in the cave, figuring out better ways to hunt animals. But they are about practice. They're not about getting people in to fill you up with a whole lot of information. They're about sharing practice, because you understand what each other's practice is like because you understand the context. We are involved in them in everyday life, and so there are informal ones. I'm sure on the sideline of sport on Saturday, there's lots of not just swapping about what's happening on the field or on the court. There's often parenting advice or parenting sharing or horror stories. We've got a 10-year-old grandson, and we're starting to understand the influence of Fortnite and how they share their strategies with one another and work often as a team. So they come in many shapes and sizes. And some are almost invisible, but they are about unearthing practice and sharing your personal practical knowledge, that knowledge that sometimes you just do it, and then you have to unpack it and explain how you do it. Learning from and with your peers is the most powerful learning out. Because we understand each other's context. As I said, you understand the challenges. Even though your farms might be different, you might be in a similar region or you're trying to solve a similar problem. But it is about our practice.
So thank you, Ben. We'd like you, let's not get hung up about whether your group is a community of practice or whether it fits the criteria of a community of practice, because it's really not, I don't think about that. And I chose that story about the SARS laboratory community, because even though they were a very short community of practice, and we'd hope that most communities of practice would last a hell of a lot longer than a month, but they compressed time. They met every day and shared their practice. And so, you know, they have all the hallmarks of a community of practice. Did they have a passion or a common purpose that they wanted to make a difference about? You betcha they did. They were really into it. Did they form a community? Well, they met every day. They developed relationships. Some of them continued to, be friends or contacts a long time after the initial mission was accomplished. And did they share practice? Absolutely, they shared practice. So communities of practice are passionate about what they do. They form a community, they develop relationships and high levels of trust, and they share their practice. They challenge each other, they critique each other, they suggest new ideas or new ways of looking at things, they suggest new things to try. And so we not only do we get sharing of personal practical knowledge, our PPK, so hopefully everyone's comfortable with that acronym now, because we'll probably keep using it as an acronym. Pull us up if we do it too often. They share their PPK, but not only that, but they are sharing the PPK that is actually the stuff that they're doing. They're practitioners. So they are sharing what's happening in the real world with each other. And they also develop innovations that way.
It's probable at some point the groups that you work with will behave like a community of practice, or they might benefit from adopting some of the characteristics or activities of a community of practice. Or perhaps they might gain some longevity by becoming a community of practice. What we want to explore with you today is we've put a lot of thought into what a successful community practice might look like, but how can we cultivate those conditions, and that's what we really want to have a look at deliberately. So what strategies would enable us to capture all that personal practical knowledge, or PPK, and collectively utilise it, the knowledge of our peers, to get better as scientists, as farmers, hey, even as facilitators. So as we go, be thinking, what ideas, what gems, what possibilities can I take away from today to enhance the conversations, to enhance my practice? So we're going to go into a breakout room. When you get into your breakout room, you're going to introduce yourself, go around the group and explain, what does a community of practice mean to me at this point in time? What does it actually mean to me? What am I thinking? And what's it got me wondering about? And facilitators, we'd really like you to record the wonderings in Slack, because we will refer to those later as we move through the session.
Welcome back, everyone. Facilitators, if you have a chance to keep chucking anything into Slack, that would be awesome. And anyone else in the breakout room, please feel free to go onto the Slack channel and add any wonderings and thoughts from the breakout room. So Lab and Mary, over to you to address any of those major wonderings that...
Yeah, the first one that we saw that popped up that stood out that we perhaps need to address at this stage. Some of them we may leave till the end, because we think that some of them are going to be addressed anyway as we go through, but about, is there an optimum group size? And the answer from the experts is that no, you can have a community of practice of 2 people if you want, but some communities of practice can be as large as kind of 200 people, and they can be all around the world. So it's pretty loose. We do make the comment though that when you get too big, you may lose the focus of the group, and so it's important to have the focus really well defined, so that you know exactly what your group is about, and that's what you stick to. And if you want to sort of deviate or branch out, then you form another community of practice or a chapter under the wider one. So you can have, communities of practice within communities of practice, if you like. But it's important to stick to your knitting, I guess.
Yeah, and within a community of practice, you'll have subsets of people who are driving particular aspects of that. We don't want to get too complex at this point in time, because it's quite a large concept to get your head around. Lawrence has brought up, the group that was with Lawrence has brought up here around the high level of trust and applying the concept to us as facilitators. So absolutely, Lawrence, it's the way we all learn to facilitate better if we can share what we do. So let's get into, I'm just thinking if we move into the next segment, I think we'll answer a number of those things, but we do have some time at the end to get into that. In the video, we talked about what is a community of practice, and we talked about the conditions to support that community to thrive. We've shared some theory with you, and we want to devote a large majority of this session today to help you explore the practice of that, because you could drown in the theory, and we're practitioners like all of you. In a moment, we're going to run through a quick recap of the conditions for success, and we'd like to be able to look at that sometimes through the lens of a facilitator, because a facilitator has a really key role in a community of practice. And as we do, be thinking about your life and what you currently do, and be thinking, where does this fit for me? What part do I play? Okay. So if we look at these conditions for success, for successful communities, they benefit from the brain power of the whole community. And sometimes you're really surprised what you can learn from someone else if you just listen. Everyone learns from sharing stories. Stories are really powerful. And in this way, people engage in that collective learning.
So we can go to the next slide now, Ben. The first condition that we've come up with is that they create value for their members, and that members always derive high value for their time out of the interactions with the other members. They've got a passion for what they're doing, and the focus is on practice, and that is, what is happening, not what should be happening, but what is happening. So it's a warts and all experience, and the third bullet point there, trust, is crucial to that you are trusting enough of each other to be vulnerable. So you are prepared to share your stuff ups and your mistakes, or your anxieties and your wonderings about how things are going. And then the last one is that the community develops its own rhythm that suits the majority of the members. In the opening story, the SARS group got together every day because there was so much urgency. But the comment has been made that we need to remember that community members are very, very seldom, being a community member is very seldom a person's main job. It's not their day job. It's something that they do that they're passionate about, and they want to get better. And so they want to share their practice with other practitioners. And so the rhythm is something that the group finds of its own. And the facilitator has a role to play here, of course, of kind of judge and find out what that is, and helping to organise that rhythm. So, if we next slide.
Yep. One of the big things is they are self-governing, but they do need a facilitator or a coordinator. And so there's leadership within the community is one of those conditions. Leadership comes in many shapes and sizes, but it's owned by the members beyond engagement. It is their community. It's not the facilitator's community. They take responsibility for structuring the learning process for their needs. So they have to be really open and transparent about what they're looking for. There needs to be a core group with energy. Otherwise, just like if you don't put petrol in your car, it won't work. There needs to be that there, and one or two are not enough to sustain that over time. So everyone in that core group needs to have a role. And the personal relationships are built around those connections, shared interests, shared values, shared chemistry. The facilitator fosters this by truly listening, deeply listening, and then maintaining that personal contact. Resilience and persistence are vital ingredients. So when new ideas or innovations, they need nourishment and may not succeed the first time. In fact, often the best ideas don't. So it might be iteration number 66 where you finally find the nugget of gold. And, you know, as we know from the RMPP model, the importance of that adoption support. I am trying new things because my peers are trying them too. And I know they'll help me if I lose my way or I hit an unexpected hurdle. And if I share the warts, we can all learn together. It's not just sharing the success. It's not a competition.
And then the third one, thanks Ben, is visibility. And we have to acknowledge Hugh Galvin here a few weeks ago talked about making obvious the obvious, and it's a matter of documenting the activities and the achievements and the learning of the group, spotlighting those things that may become invisible but because they're kind of taken for granted, but making sure that we do actually celebrate successes and celebrate achievements and spotlight those things that are kind of just can easily slide away. And then the second point is thinking about how we're going to document the value for members. How do we, and that's also making obvious the obvious. People might feel they get value out of it, but do other people realize the value that other people get from it? So documenting stories of the value that's created during the life of a community. And we are going to attempt at the end to give you a brief exposure to a concept called value creation stories. And the idea of these is that they actually document the value flow. They document the causality, if you like. So I did this and I got this, and so that meant that this happened, and that meant that. So there is a flow of value that you can develop through a story, and it's a great way to tell some of these stories. And we know from Mark Elliott and from talking to all of you guys that there are some absolutely wonderful stories out there about action groups. So, you know, we can use this far wider than just in a community of practice.
So now that you're gaining an understanding of the conditions to thrive, as a facilitator, what kind of strategies can you think of to cultivate those conditions? You'll go back to the same breakout group, so you don't need to introduce yourselves again. And facilitator, can you record the strategies you come up with in Slack? But also before you come back, decide as a group which is your favourite strategy, and maybe decide on your second favourite strategy in case someone else hitchhikes yours first. And you'll come back. We're going to ask each group to share back their favourite strategy, but they'll all be recorded on Slack. Thank you.
Oh, welcome back, everyone. If you can mute, that would be great. Great to have you. Lab and Mary, back to you. Okay,
thank you, everybody. Some great stuff coming through and some great wonderings still coming through on the Slack. We're actually looking for strategies at this point, so I'm going to go around each group and just ask you what your favourite strategy was in your group. So, who would like to start? Who can I pick on?
It's Lawrence.
Lawrence, can I pick on you, fellow namesake? You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'm just furiously typing as we speak, Lab. I think what we came up with was the strategy of kind of visibility and making obvious the obvious ties in with that, having that core group and being really clear as to what the purpose is. Mm-hmm. You know, I guess it became obvious, Lab, from your little story that group was incredibly focused, on the SARS thing of a goal that they were working towards. And I think what quite a lot of facilitators have found is that a group may start off with a purpose like this, but then it tends to deviate, you know. And I think that's been quite common. And so and I guess that's where it ties into the leadership. And so I guess the strategy that we came back to is continually checking in that the group is still relevant and that we're on track with that core purpose, you know, that we are addressing, you know, people's needs.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers the question.
Okay. What about
Great,
Shona?
thank you. Shona, have you got a...
I've delegated to Lucy to report on this one.
Yep.
Hey guys, so our favourite strategy was to
We can't
use.
hear you, Lucy.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we're hearing you now.
Sorry. So our favourite strategy we decided upon was having rules of engagement, but we actually changed it to group culture. So having an agreed group culture plan. This is how we're going to act, behave, and work together at the beginning, and reviewing that as we went through as well.
Okay.
So
Great, thank you. And I guess, John, were you facilitating? You want to dob somebody in to tell us your favourite?
No, I took some good notes, thanks. And at the end, it came back for us, it was communication. That's just so important. And the other element that came up for us was about being courageous, to be flexible, to deviate from the plan when required. So, you know, just listening intently to the group and changing your prepared plan and going with where the group needs to go when that's required.
And that is so important, John. You know, as a facilitator, there's a lot of questions coming out in the Slack and in the chat about, are you the, is it better if you're outside of the group rather than part of the group? There's so much flexibility here, but speaking from personal experience facilitating a number of communities of practice, I believe it's often really helpful to be outside of that group, because you don't get caught up in the clutter of what it is they're looking into, and you don't tend to want to dive in to try and fix them up. You're always extracting out of them the gold. But I use the analogy of conducting the orchestra. You're ensuring that their instruments are all supporting one another rather than playing out of tune. But having what you just said too, John, that flexibility when you see we came together for this purpose, but now we're kind of going off on this way. If that's where the group needs to go, that's where the group needs to go. And you follow them like a tracker dog, but you ensure that you're always putting things in place to keep them in that place of learning.
And one thing I'd like to add to that is that that the facilitator can, yes, I agree with what Mary's saying, but you do need to have knowledge enough of the context of the group to be able to interact in a meaningful way with them. And Etienne Wegner talks about you have to pass the roll your eyes test. You know, if you stand up in front or try and facilitate a group of people, particularly when you are focusing on practice, and you have not got a clue what it means to get down and, you know, put in a fence post or whatever it might be, or to condition score a U, then you really have no credibility, and so you still need to have that level of credibility.
Yeah,
I think maybe we need to. Time's marching on, so we really want to get into this next exercise, and then at the end we'll try and address some of those other queries and wonderings. Otherwise, we'll attempt to do it afterwards in the Slack channel.
Lab and I are great believers in the fact that sometimes you can go to these sorts of things and it becomes a talk fest and then nothing happens. So we really want to give you time to think deeply about what is it I want to take away from this to develop in myself. And we asked you in the pre-work to think about what's an improvement or a challenge for you as a facilitator. Here we are, a group of facilitators online. So we're going to put you into triads, and we want to make sure that you get some valuable time in that triad. If the first person in the triad will share, they'll get 2 minutes to share, and you will get some alerts come up on screen. 2 minutes to share what it is they want to improve about their practice as a facilitator, or a challenge they have as a facilitator. The other two will listen, and then for a minute, Those other two will have a bit of a conversation, what they heard, and maybe ask some clarifying questions. And then they'll rotate and do the second person. So each person is 2 minutes of sharing, up to 2 minutes of sharing, and then a minute to listen to the other two, what they heard, which is great feedback. 3 times around that is 9 minutes. You'll get little flash warnings on your screen. And then there'll be 2 minutes at the end for you to have quiet reflection and write down a goal. Write down a goal for yourself of something that you'd like to work on in your facilitation, and record it on Slack would be great. We'll come back and then have a look at a tool that might help you do that. So into triads, please.
Welcome back, everyone. Go, Mary.
Okay, so you've had your time with your triad and you've come up with a goal, and I'm just going to demonstrate. I'm going to teach you a new tool to help you make your goal, be able to eat it in bite-sized chunks. So it's a tool I've been using for a long time called the traffic light. And so say, for instance, my goal as a facilitator was I need to develop, I want to ask better questions, more valuable questions of people when I facilitate. That might be my goal. So as a result of wanting to do that, I then use the traffic light to start to modify my behaviour. Because that's what's going to help me achieve my goal. So I say to myself, okay, to ask better questions, what's one thing, and you need to keep it at one thing, what's one thing I'm going to stop doing? What's one thing I'm going to do differently, and what's one thing I'm going to start doing? So maybe one thing I'm going to stop doing to ask better questions is I'm going to stop thinking what I'm going to say next when someone is talking. I'm going to listen. To do differently, I'm going to ask more clarifying questions of the person to get to understand them better and really understand where they're coming from. And to start doing, to ask better questions, I'm going to get prepared beforehand by really understanding the context, so I can ask some deeper inquiry type questions. So that's how you use a traffic light to help you break your goal down and look at the behaviours I need to change to achieve my goal. What I'd like to be able to do is to give you all give you all a few minutes to sit there and come up with your own traffic light. It's up to you whether you share it with anybody or not. Often I find sharing it is better because someone can then ask you in a couple of weeks, how are you going with stopping, whatever. But take some time and make your own traffic light. Remember to mute yourself and not try to have a conversation, because we're all back in the same room now, and people will hear you. So we'll leave you in peace to do that. Okay, everyone, I'm not sure whether you've finished coming up with your traffic light yet, but what I want to say is a huge thank you to you for the openness that you've put your goals on Slack, and there are some wonderful goals here that people want to be working on, and you'll be able to support one another.
Okay, just like to support what Mary said, and it's really great to see that level of trust within a group, even online. So maybe that helps to answer one of your group's questions, John, about do we have to all be face-to-face for communities of practice? We had a Zoom community of practice recently with some of the people in the network and Dusty and Ben from the RMPP office, where we all just hooked up once a week and shared what we'd learned during the week. And it was really great. So what I'd like to do now, and if we just go to the last slide now, Ben, if that's possible, thank you, is talk about value creation stories very briefly, just to give you a taste and an introduction to the concept. The idea is what these do is they demonstrate the value flow through an interaction. And so you can apply to each of these stages, you can apply the so what question. So the immediate value is what happens straight away. So what? Well, it sparked the potential value. So what? Well, I went and tried it. I applied it. Oh, so what? Well, this happened. That was the result. So that's the flow of value through these value creation stories. And I'm just going to read you one that I quickly scribbled down. And this is by way of a little challenge as well. So just imagine I went to a facilitator forum workshop, maybe this one, and from the conversations, I picked up a new idea that really resonated with me. So The immediate value was that I picked up something that really resonated with me. The potential value was I thought I could use that next time I work with one of my groups. The applied value was I actually went out and did it. I applied it in my very next workshop that I ran. And the realized value was, wow, it worked a treat. My group really got a lot out of it, and I felt really good too and learned something new. So it's just a quick introduction, really. We don't have a lot of time left, and Denise, you can pull me up as soon as you like.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, it's just an introduction to what we mean by a value creation story, and crafting your stories this way gives them real meaning, because it does actually, it demonstrates the cause and effect of what's happening.
I have to say, in reading the Slack channel too, I can see a lot of immediate value that's come up for many of you, and things you want to go away. There's some farmers that are going to get to see the traffic light by the look of things, and there's another group that are going to their facilitator's going to make sure that time is allowed at the end to reflect and think, what am I going to do with this? And so there's been a lot of that kind of thing happening today. Welcome to a community of practice for facilitators. We've kind of given you that experience in a very minute way, but just imagine what the potential could be.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll hand back to...
Yep, I just wanted, my last comment is that communities of practice are about practice. It's about the huge untapped resource of the personal practical knowledge of our peers. In any area of endeavour, there's that huge resource that we very often don't tap into enough. We don't always need a subject matter expert to tell us what to do. We need to get down dirty and share our practice and learn how to do stuff. And out of that comes some of the innovations and the new knowledge that we need to address the problems of today. So it's learning from and with our peers, and it's just finding the right place for this to happen within your areas. So we're not expecting anyway, everyone's going to go away thinking, I'm going to start a community of practice. Just that I'm going to use some of this stuff in what I do. And maybe one of the potential solutions to your longevity of your action group problems is if they become a community of practice or join up with other action groups and become communities of practice, maybe they'll last for a lot longer than you may think. So I'll leave you with that.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.